Alright, so I bought the Crimson Vow Vampire Bloodline 100 card commander deck. This is the reduced waste version, which comes in a box like this. I guess it can be recycled and is less waste than the traditional version. There's Strefan or Strefan, more progenitor. Got a fold out here, talks a little bit about him. Says, whether sipped from goblets or spilled from peasants' throats, blood grants power. Vampire Lord Strefan, or Strefan, is no stranger to abusing the sanguine life force for his own means, and neither will you be. As you play classic vampire synergies, Strefan will help you draw and collect blood tokens from your foes' life totals. Sacrifice blood tokens to sift through your library to find horrifically monstrous vampires, and Strefan's ability will invite them to feast early. As your foes fall faint from blood loss, you need only finish your meal. Strefan Moor Progenitor. He's the progenitor of the Moor lineage of vampires and the lord of a remote part of Strincia's outland valleys. As a human, millennia ago, Strefan admired no one more than his father. When his father met his end in an untimely accident, Strefan became obsessed with uncovering the secret to immortality. This obsession eventually led to a partnership with Edgar Markov, Olivia Valdarin, and the other humans who eventually became Innistrad's first vampires. Frustrated with his limited power and status as a minor vampire lord, Strefan treats his people with an incomparable cruelty. Sigarda attempted to intervene in the past, but Strefan was able to repel her forces. Angels have set neither foot nor wing in his territory ever since. Strefan fears only one thing: his ancient familial estate, abandoned when his father died, where twisted and terrible things now haunt the halls. Alright, we got a life wheel. Goes up to 40 on one side for commander, and 20 on the other side. Got Timothar, Baron of Bats, Vampire Noble, legendary creature. He's a 4/4, and he costs 4 and 2 black. He's got Ward, discard a card. Whenever another non-token vampire you control dies, you may pay 1 and exile it. If you do, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. It gains, when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it and return the exiled card to the battlefield tapped. It's pretty cool, and it's a foil. Got Blood Tithe Harvester. He's a 3/2, costs 1 black, 1 red. When he enters the battlefield, create a blood token. Tap him, sacrifice Blood Tithe Harvester. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is twice the number of blood tokens you control. Activate only as a sorcery. Seems decent for a 2-drop. Got Imposing Grandeur Sorcery, costs 4 mana, 1 red. Each player may discard their hand and draw cards equal to the greatest mana value of a commander they own on the battlefield or in the command zone. Bloodline Necromancer. He's a 3/2, costs 4 mana, 1 black. Vampire Wizard, has lifelink. When he enters the battlefield, you may return target vampire or wizard creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Decent. Blood Artist. He's a 0 and 1 toughness, costs 1 mana, 1 black. Whenever a Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Not bad. Ancient Craving, 3 mana, 1 black sorcery. You draw 3 cards and you lose 3 life. Could be useful, especially with some life gain, of course. Alright, Shadowgrange Archfiend. He costs 6 mana, 1 black, and he's at 8/4. He's a demon, so one of the few creatures in this commander deck that's not a vampire. When he enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to the greatest power among creatures sacrificed this way. And he has Madness as an ability, costs 2 mana, 1 black, pay 8 life, If you discard this card, discard it into exile. When you do, cast it for its madness cost or put it into your graveyard. Arterial Alchemy. It's an enchantment for 2 mana, 1 red. When it enters the battlefield, create a blood token for each opponent you have. It's an artifact with 1 discard a card, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. Well, I'm sure we all know how the blood tokens work by now. Blood tokens you control are equipment in addition to their other types and have equipped creature gets +2 power and equip 2. Feed the Swarm. I know this is one that I have at least one of in the arena. Sorcery for 1 mana, 1 black. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Falkenrath Noble is a 2/2 for a 3 mana, 1 black. He has flying. Whenever he or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Urge to Feed. Instant for 2 black. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. You may tap any number of untapped vampire creatures you control. If you do, put +1/+1 counter on each of those vampires. Night's Whisper. Sorcery for 1 mana, 1 black. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. So a smaller version of Ancient Craving. Indulgent Aristocrat. For 1 black, has lifelink. And for 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, put +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. And he's a 1/1. Seems like a pretty good deal. Vandal Blast, sorcery for 1 red, destroy target artifact you don't control. Overload for 4 mana, 1 red. You may cast a spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. Rakdos Charm, 1 black, 1 red instant. Choose 1. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard, or destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Arcane Signet. Got at least one of these in the arena, and I've got a couple from other commander decks. It costs 2 mana to put on the battlefield, and then tap it to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Strumkirk Captain, 1 mana plus 1 red, 1 black. He's a 2/2. He has first strike, and other vampire creatures you control get +1/+1 and have first strike. So decently powerful 3-drop there. Vampire Nighthawk is a 2/3, and he costs 1 mana plus 2 black. Vampire Shaman, flying, death touch, and lifelink. Stensia Masquerade enchantment for 2 mana plus 1 red. Attacking creatures you control have first strike. Pretty awesome. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And it has a madness cost of 2 mana and 1 red. If you discard this card, discard it into exile. When you do, cast it for its madness cost or put it into your graveyard. Rakish Heir. He's a 2/2 and he costs 2 mana, 1 red. Whenever a vampire you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it. It's pretty decent. Here's our commander. Strephon, or Strephon. I'm thinking I'm leaning towards it's Strephon. Mora Progenitor. He's a 3/2 legendary creature vampire noble. Costs 2 mana plus 1 black, 1 red. Flying, and at the beginning of your end step, create a blood token for each player who lost life this turn. Whenever he attacks, you may sacrifice 2 blood tokens. If you do, you may put a vampire card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, and it gains indestructible until end of turn. So I'm sure it's a good idea to do that. Makes probably the most powerful thing about that card. Butcher of Malakir, Vampire Warrior, has flying. Whenever Butcher of Malakir or another creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. He's a 5/4 and he costs 5 mana, 2 black. Champion of Dusk, Vampire Knight, 4/4, costs 3 mana, 2 black. When Champion of Dusk enters the battlefield, you draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is the number of vampires you control. Cordial Vampire, he's a 1/1, costs 2 black. Whenever he or another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Damnable Pact, sorcery for X and 2 black. Target player draws X cards and loses X life. Dark Imposter, Vampire Assassin for 2 mana 1 black, and he's a 2/2. Spend 4 mana 2 black to exile target creature and put a +1/+1 counter on Dark Imposter. And he has all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with it. Malakir Blood Witch, Vampire Shaman for 3 mana 2 black. She's a 4/4. She has flying and protection from white. When she enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to the number of vampires you control. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. Necropolis Regent, 6/5 for 3 mana and 3 black. Has flying. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. Sounds pretty cool. Nirkana Revenant. He's a 4/4 Vampire Shade for 4 mana 2 black. Whenever you tap a swamp for mana, add an additional black. Pretty cool there. And spend 1 black, and he gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Patron of the Vein, Vampire Shaman 4/4 for 4 mana 2 black. Has flying. When he enters the battlefield, destroy target creature an opponent controls. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it and put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. Sanctum Seeker. One I'm pretty sure is banned. I have this in the arena in my Historic Vampires deck and my Historic Vampire Clerics deck. Vampire Knight 3/4 for 2 mana 2 black. Whenever a vampire you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Stromkirk Condemned. He's a 2/2 Vampire Horror for 2 black. Discard a card. Vampires you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Activate only once each turn. Underworld Connections. An enchantment aura for 1 mana 2 black. Enchant a land. Enchanted land has pay 1 life, draw a card. Anji's Ravager, Vampire Berserker. He's a 3/3. He costs 2 mana 1 red. Anji's Ravager attacks each combat if able. Whenever he attacks, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. Madness cost of 1 mana 1 red. Discard it into exile. When you do, cast it for its madness cost or put it into your graveyard. Avacyn's Judgment, sorcery for 1 mana 1 red. Has madness cost of X1 red. You can discard it and cast it for its madness cost or put it into your graveyard. Deals 2 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. If the spell's madness cost was paid, it deals X damage divided as you choose among those permanents and or players instead. Blasphemous Act. Sorcery for 8 mana 1 red. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. It deals 13 damage to each creature. Quite powerful there. Bloodsworn Steward. Vampire Knight with flying. He's a 4/4. He costs 2 mana 2 red. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have haste. Crimson Honor Guard. Vampire Knight. He's a 4/5 and costs 3 mana 2 red. He has trample. At the beginning of each player's end step, Crimson Honor Guard deals 4 damage to that player unless they control a commander. Falkenrath Gorger, Vampire Berserker. He's a 2/1 and he costs 1 red. Each vampire creature card you own that isn't on the battlefield has madness. The madness cost is equal to its mana cost. Mob Rule, a sorcery for 4 and 2 red. Choose one. Either gain control of all creatures with power 4 or greater until end of turn, and untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. Or gain control of all creatures with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. Molten Echoes, enchantment for 2 mana 2 red. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature, and that token gains haste. Exile at the beginning of the next end step. Stromkirk Occultist, Vampire Horror for 2 mana 1 red. He's a 3/2, has trample. Whenever a Stromkirk Occultist deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. And he has a madness cost of 1 red. Alright, we've got a really cool looking vampire dragon. He's a 5/5 and he costs 6 and 1 black and 1 red. Has flying, of course. Whenever a creature dealt damage by vampiric dragon this turn dies, put a +1/+1 counter on vampiric dragon. And for 1 mana 1 red, vampiric dragon deals 1 damage to target creature. Got a land called Exotic Orchard. Add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Foreboding Ruins. As it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a swamp or mountain card from your hand. If you don't, Foreboding Ruins enters the battlefield tapped. Add black or red, of course. Shadowblood Ridge. For 1 mana, add black and red. Smoldering Marsh. Add black or red. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Temple of Malice. Enters battlefield tapped, and you can scry 1. Add black or red. Temple of the False God. Add 2 colorless. Activate only if you control 5 or more lands. Unclaimed Territory. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and you can add a colorless, or you can add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. Unstable Obelisk. Artifact for 3 mana. Tap it to add a colorless. For 7 mana, sacrifice Unstable Obelisk, destroy target permanent. Decently powerful artifact there. Got Command Tower. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Myriad Landscape. Enters the battlefield tapped. Add a colorless, or for 2 mana, sacrifice it. Search your library for 2 basic land cards that share a land type. Put them onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. Path of Ancestry. Enters the battlefield tapped. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. When that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. Rakdos Carnarium. Enters battlefield tapped, and when it enters battlefield, return a land you control to its owner's hand, and add 1 black and 1 red. Tainted Peak. Add a colorless or a black or red. Activate only if you control a swamp. Crossway Troublemakers. 5/5 vampire that costs 5 and 1 black. Attacking vampires you control have Death Touch and Lifelink. Pretty awesome. Pretty powerful card there. Whenever a vampire you control dies, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Glasscast Heart. Artifact for 2 mana 1 black. Pretty cool artwork there. Whenever 1 or more vampires you control attack, create a blood token. And for 1 black, pay 1 life to create a 1/1 white and black vampire creature token with lifelink. Pay 2 black, sacrifice Glasscast Heart, and 13 blood tokens. Each opponent loses 13 life and you gain 13 life. I guess that's definitely something you're going to want to do if you have 13 blood tokens. Camber the Plunderer. Legendary creature vampire rogue. He's a 3/4 and he costs 3 mana 1 black. Partner with Loreen the Diversion. When this creature enters the battlefield, target player may put Loreen into their hand from their library, then shuffle. He has lifelink. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life and create a blood token. Olivia's Wrath. Sorcery for 4 mana 1 black. Each non-vampire creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of vampires you control. And the quotes here, Olivia Valdarn says, "These worthless cattle think they can sneak unnoticed into my wedding. Dispose of them." Predator's Hour. Sorcery for 1 mana 1 black. Until end of turn, creatures you control gain menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at and play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. And here is Loreen the Diversion that gets partnered with Camber the Plunderer. Human Rogue is a 3/3, costs 2 mana 1 red. When this creature enters the battlefield, target player may put Camber into their hand from their library, then shuffle. First strike. And for 2, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Goad target creature until the next turn. Target creature attacks each combat if able, and attacks a player other than you if able. Of course, that's if you're playing with more than 2 people, which Commander usually is. Markov Enforcer. He's a 6/6, costs 4 mana, 2 red, Vampire Soldier. Whenever he or another vampire enters the battlefield under your control, he fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. Whenever a creature dealt damage by him this turn dies, create a blood token. Midnight Arsonist, 3/2, for a 3 mana, 1 red. When he enters the battlefield, destroy up to X target artifacts without mana abilities, where X is the number of vampires you control. Very specific. Scion of Opulence, Vampire Noble, for 2 mana, 1 red. She's a 3/1. Whenever she or another non-token vampire you control dies, create a treasure token. And for 1 red, sacrifice 2 artifacts. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Sinister Waltz, a sorcery for 3 mana and 1 black, 1 red. Choose 3 target creature cards in your graveyard, return 2 of them at random to the battlefield and put the other on the bottom of your library. Anawan the Ruin Sage, legendary creature vampire shaman. He's a 4/3 and he costs 3 mana, 2 black. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature. Bloodlord of Vaskoth, Vampire Warrior. He's a 3/3 and he costs 3 mana, 2 black. Has Bloodthirst 3. If an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. And he has flying. Whenever you cast a vampire creature spell, it gains Bloodthirst 3. Pretty awesome. Blood Tracker, Vampire Wizard. He's a 2/2 and he costs 3 mana, 1 black. Has flying. For 1 black, pay 2 life, put a +1/+1 counter on Blood Tracker. When he leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. And now we got a bunch of pretty cool looking swamps. Got like a forest graveyard going on there. Dark but kind of detailed, kind of fiery lava mountain. Fire Diamond, artifact for 2 mana, enters the battlefield tapped, add 1 red. Swiftfoot Boots for 2 mana, artifact equipment, gives equipped creature hexproof and haste, cost 1 to equip it. Soul Ring for 1 mana, artifact, add 2 colorless. Rakdos Signet for 2 mana, artifact, and for 1 mana, tap to add 1 black and 1 red. Commander's Sphere for 3 mana, artifact. Tap it, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Sacrifice it to draw a card. Charcoal Diamond for 2 mana, artifact. Enters the battlefield tapped. Add 1 black. It's the thick cardboard version. I honestly don't know what they usually call these. Of the Commander Streffen that I was using to separate my tokens from the rest of the deck. Here's the tokens. Vampire, 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. Other side blood token. Bat 1/1 blood token on the other side. Blood token with 1/1 bat. Blood token on the other side is a treasure. Treasure artifact blood token. Blood token bat. Vampire blood token. Another blood token and vampire token and treasure. And here's another token that explains the magic formats on the back. So that is the Vampire Bloodline. I recommend. I know I've read some people say that they're gonna just take cards out of it to add to their vampire deck. That's, you know, that's totally up to you. Or you can get those cards another way. But personally, I think that this is a pretty good commander deck if you like vampires primarily. You know, it was only like 35, 36 bucks or whatever on Amazon. Tell me what you think about this Vampire Bloodline commander deck in the comments below. Tap that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.